Well, Geraldine, let's talk a little bit about Holy Week and what that means in our culture, what it's supposed to mean to Christian people, and so on. I guess one of the points is that a lot of people maybe don't get directly into Holy Week through church services. I mean, we're very much geared into that ourselves. We have liturgical planning to do, and we'll be there for Holy Thursday and for Good Friday and for the Easter Vigil, the three main feasts. I guess in our churches, in the Catholic community, those days are not real well attended. Although I think there's a lot of people who really do get a lot out of them and look forward to those because they are the most special days in the liturgical year. You have some sense of that, of how people react?
I think it's a good idea to look at the cultural experience first, and my own sense is one, too, that possibly being church people and being directly tied into church, we assume that everyone prepares for Holy Week in the manner that we do, and that it would be a matter of reflecting on the readings daily and taking part in all the ceremonies of Holy Week, which includes a lot of ritual, which I think is very, very important. But in having conversation with people, many people are not able to do that, not necessarily because they don't want to. Sometimes their work schedules are not don't allow them to be in church on Good Friday, let's say from 12 to 3. In the past, many places would close. So in a sense, I know that while our churches are not over-brimming with people, I have a tendency to think that people are still aware that it is Holy Week, that it does mean something to them. And so there must be a way that we can look at those life experiences which tend to then embellish the liturgy of Holy Week. And so a nice combination of, I think, acknowledging it culturally as to where we're at, but then let's work with what we have and where we can go with it.
I like that framework a lot. It suggests that we do the best we can with these liturgies and invite people to come and hope that good crowds come. But also we have to remember as we gather people on Palm Sunday and on Easter Sunday that a lot of them will not have been at the three major ceremonies in between, and that maybe we pick up a lot of their life experiences then in those celebrations. Because I think that's, in a sense, Good Friday is the part of everybody's life, isn't it? I mean, it's the suffering dimension. It's the facing of the anxieties and the difficulties, the struggles, the challenges, and the deaths that come to us throughout life. So there's a way in which the Easter celebration, the Paschal Mystery, these major feasts of Holy Week are so built into the human condition, so much part of the human psyche that you can't get away from them. And we really do need to tap those in one way or another. We really begin this with Palm Sunday, don't we? And Palm Sunday, I think, captures some of the mood of the coming Holy Week. There's really two different moods to that ceremony. There's the triumphal entry of Jesus into Jerusalem. It has sort of a joyful character. It reminds us of the victory of the resurrection. But then later on in the service, there's the reading of the Passion, which prepares us for Good Friday and the more negative aspects of human life, the darker parts of human existence. So right within the Palm Sunday liturgies, we find those two major themes that are going to carry us through the whole of Holy Week. I think Palm Sunday is a feast that many people do get into and can mean something to them.
The Gospel on Palm Sunday, of course, is Luke's. This year we have Luke's version of the Passion, and again, I think that there's a key thing to tap into and to look at which particular Gospel writer we're looking at in a given year. And given that it's Luke's Gospel, I sense a theme there that in the Passion that we really see Jesus, one as a very, very peaceful person, one who has an attitude of prayerfulness, and again that whole idea of forgiveness. And I think that that's unique to Luke's Gospel. Luke is the one that mentions all of those sections. I think we have strains in that of in the other Gospel writers, but I find that a particularly a good theme to look at, the idea of Jesus representing his peacefulness in the midst of so much suffering, or that idea of looking at his life as he experienced things where he certainly would have had the opportunity to become extremely defensive, and instead he was, most peaceful and grounded in his Father's will, grounded in knowing that somehow this was all going to work out. So there's that image of Christ for us for those times in our life when, let's say, we would want to become defensive. It's something small or some large event in our own life experience. So just that peace that Jesus can, that peace or that groundedness that Jesus is an example of for us, I find very, very helpful for life experiences, because we certainly do encounter them.
Maybe I can pick up on some of those ideas. The first thing you point out was that we're on a 3-year cycle, A, B, C, and we read different major sections from the synoptics, that is Matthew, Mark, and Luke, on different years. So this is year C, and therefore we're reading from Luke's Passion account. And you're saying that there's a particular flavor to it. We often associate Luke with the compassionate Jesus. Maybe what you're talking about here, about his own self-composure and his acceptance and his peacefulness, is one of the reasons that he was able to be passionate to others, that he had himself together enough to be able to suffer with and to be with other individuals. So we get a distinctive slant on Jesus in each of the 4 Gospels, and you're bringing out here Luke's version of the Passion, which reminds us of Jesus' peacefulness, and what I'm saying is that in the compassion that he brings to dealing with others. And I guess that would be the second thing that I liked about what you said then, is trying to link that to our life experiences. And we're always trying to learn from Jesus, and he's such a multifaceted person and in so many ways reveals God to us that we can learn about everything for our own life, but we need to focus it and slant it. And in this case, we're the people who are often agitated and unable to deal with the vicissitudes of life, and we get bent out of shape over small matters. And maybe by looking at Jesus in his own self-peacefulness, that we're able to learn something about carrying on with that. So that would take us, it would give us sort of a mood, perhaps, to go through the Holy Week. One of the things we're trying to learn through Holy Week is how we're supposed to live life generally. It's not just a matter of, well, there's this one special week and then that's the end of it. But we're trying to learn things about life that we can carry with us that become part of our very character and makeup. In this case, your suggestion, learning the peacefulness of Jesus, which seems to me to be very important.
And along with that mood, then, I think it's important to keep in mind that every year as we celebrate Holy Week, we're really bringing our own life experiences to that. So on the one hand, this is something very familiar to us, to go through the passion and death and the resurrection. And yet, again, we're talking about Paschal mystery. And again, you mentioned how crucial that is to our life. I guess I like to take the stance of this year, what has happened since in my life experience since last year, that I bring these life experiences to this celebration of Holy Week, and therefore it causes me a reflection. I'm also aware, too, that many times our life experiences are out of sync with the liturgical rhythms. Mm-hmm. And there might very well be someone who has already had their Holy Week or their Good Friday at some other point in the year, but it's to bring those experiences now and to unite them and to be in sync. So
one way to do that, I take it, would be to bring memory to Holy Week. In other words, if someone has had throughout the year a real crisis and then they've come through it and they've known their resurrection or their moment of triumph maybe months ago, maybe one of the things they can do during Holy Week is to try to remember that and put it into a prayerful context and relate it to the suffering and death and resurrection of Jesus during this time. That's a good tip, I think, for celebrating Holy Week effectively.
For example, I think certainly anyone who has experienced a death experience in the last year since Holy Week, if they are able to be in church on Good Friday and go through the suffering and death, they have a lived experience that really helps them to understand just somewhat, and yet that makes it very, very real. And I think there's a great sense of comfort there. It makes the gospel come alive. I guess that's the only way I know of for myself, is to take those life experiences. So certainly someone who has had a death experience on Good Friday, I would think would understand that, would have that deep innate feeling of knowing what it's like to have a loved one die. Or if it's not a death experience, maybe some loss experience, mm-hmm. once again.
Yeah, some of the minor deaths of life, as we say.
Loss of job.
Right, exactly. The breakup of a relationship,
right.
All kind of things like that. The other side of the Palm Sunday liturgy that I think is so important is that it sets the positive context for it. Before we read the Passion, we read about Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem, and that alerts us to the joyful side of it. It reminds us that we Christians are not masochists. I mean, we're not going through suffering for the sake of suffering, that all of the deaths, the suffering, and the Passion is for the sake of something else. It's for the sake of a final final victory. It's for the sake of Easter and resurrection. It's to lead to joy. Our theme this year in our parish has been the Lenten journey to Easter joy, trying to keep both of those ideas in there. So Palm Sunday is, again, very good for that. We should carry that message away from this Palm Sunday celebration, to keep in mind two sides of our experiences, and that when we face the darker side, then it's always in the context of a stronger grace or of an ultimate resurrection, so that we don't just get down on ourselves or get wallowing in some sort of self-pity over the destructive things that have happened to us, the crises and the small deaths that have come our way, or, as you say, even the deaths of loved ones. So Palm Sunday seems really good that way. It's the perfect way to enter into Holy Week, because it keeps both of those types of experience before us that we could bring to bear upon enriching our celebrations.
And I like that a lot, again, because it's so whole, it's integrated, and as we reflect on our life experiences, certainly that joyful part needs to be emphasized. And many times I think we need to emphasize that more, because we certainly do well with pain. I think we manage pain and we manage crisis much more effectively than we manage celebration and joy. And so possibly, again, someone's life experience, for example, maybe a recent wedding in the family or a recent family get-together, certainly could get into the the Holy Week for them this year would not be one of getting into the suffering side of it. Might be the one getting into the celebration part of it. So
right.
I really like that idea, because once again it's the integration. It's, again, certainly I think something that Christ embodies in his lifestyle.
So let's look forward then into Holy Week, Geraldine. We get to what they call the Sacred Triduum, this Holy 3 days, which includes the Holy Thursday celebration and Good Friday and the Easter Vigil. So 3 major liturgical feasts, and maybe we could look at each one of those in turn and see what sort of a mood that it brings up and what we might learn from those. I mean, I'm thinking of Holy Thursday, of course, as the remembrance of the Lord's Supper, that important event, the final meal, the Passover meal that he celebrated with his disciples, and during that meal he shared a bit of his heart with them and shared himself with them, and he put it in terms of taking the bread and saying, "This is my body which is given up for you. This is the chalice of my blood that will be shed for you." And so that is what we are remembering, at least in part, in this Holy Thursday celebration. I suppose the other major feature of that feast is the washing of the feet, because that's something else that occurred at the Last Supper, where Jesus washes the feet of his disciples, the act of the servant, and Peter doesn't want him to do it, and Jesus says, "Well, I better do it for you, or else you and I are going to be parting company here." And so that I think that has become part of our Holy Thursday celebration as well. So maybe we could look at those various facets now and see what we might learn from them or how they relate to our experience. Let's take up that washing of the feet one, because I think that's a really good innovation, and in a lot of parishes that's become an important part of the celebration. It is a way of very often it's done with the priests or the pastoral staff in a parish of washing the feet of the parishioners. It's used as a way of saying that the leaders in the parish ought to be servants. I think that's the fundamental message that I get out of it, and in fact that is the gospel passage that we read, and it really connects in. It brings out the idea of service. I read someplace where in one parish evidently they all tried to wash each other's feet. I mean, everybody got into the act, and that even had a wider symbolism of saying that everybody within the Christian congregation is meant to be servant to everyone else. We have to minister to one another, and we have to be able to receive that ministration from others.
Well, that certainly is, I think, an excellent example. I recall, when we go about getting ready for that particular service, there seems to be, at times some awkwardness. I think we go back scripturally to understand where that experience came from in Jesus' time, and I think, of course, it's something that's foreign for us, and therefore, when people are asked to take part in that, at times there is a sense of awkwardness. I mean, it's not really that normal that we have someone coming up and using our feet, and yet I think to reflect on that really does, for me, it gives me that feeling of, for someone who serves me, how humble a feeling that is, that whole idea of give and take. And I think we often say that it's much easier to be a giver rather than a receiver, and yet many times I think most of us probably need to work on that attitude of being able to receive service. And that ceremony probably touches that a lot for me.
Yeah, and it is a very powerful symbolism for many people. It's important, I suppose, that we have a broad representation of the parish in doing that. It gives a sense that we're serving all the people and not just a particular segment of the parish and so on. But it does bring out that idea of service, and that's how Christ saw himself. If you're going to be the leader, you got to be like me, and how am I? I'm a servant leader. I'm here to help others, not to lord it over them, and I'm here to help others to grow, to empower others in various ways. So that'd be a great way to enrich the life of our parish, to try to think of all of us empowering one another. I like what you said, too, about the receiving side of it, because that's very often the difficulty for generous Christians. People who are serious about the spiritual life, they're good about giving to others, but maybe not so good when others try to minister to them.
And to parallel that with what we had said earlier, the idea is then to reflect on, during the past year, when have there been those times in my life that I have been able to offer service, and to reflect on that. And then again, when in the past year during my life has someone been of service to me? And whether, let's say, if I've been sick and I've really needed to depend on someone, or let's say I'm getting ready for some family celebration, and the whole family kind of comes through, and this one brings this potluck item and that person brings that. After the event is over, we say, gee, I really couldn't have done that without all the support of all the people, and what a great feeling that is. So again, to bring some life experience to that service, so that we can reflect, so it becomes more real, so we can live it out in the resurrection time, to celebrate that again.
So the sacramental principle that you're bringing to bear upon your analysis really is that liturgy celebrates life. It's a way of pulling together what's really going on, the way God is at work in our everyday life, and in doing that, it enriches us. It helps us understand a deeper meaning of those family celebrations, as you talked about it, or the giving and receiving of ordinary daily life, as simple as it might be, of receiving a compliment or doing a tiny favor for somebody else. That's what we are ritualizing, and then that helps us to do it better in the days ahead. And I like that sort of
another example that comes to mind too. I've heard recently of many people reflect on their experience in working in soup kitchens. I think we have a number of them in the Toledo community, Catholic as well as non-Catholic, and many times people, in reflecting on that experience, initially go to be of service and really get geared up, and I think it's an excellent thing. There's something that has happened within them, and then almost consistently everyone will say what they received in that particular example, that they just receive so much more than they ever thought, and almost feel inadequate, that their help is so meager. It's preparing food, it's getting dishes ready, it's talking with people, it's respecting people as human beings, and the people that seem to benefit the most are the people who initially thought they were going to give, and they've received so much more.
Yes, I think a common experience, especially when people go into it with an open mind and heart, able to receive from the other people. Geraldine, shall we go on to the Good Friday liturgy and say something about that? And that is a very stark liturgy. I suppose one of the striking symbols of it is at the very beginning, when the clergy come in and prostrate themselves before the altar, lay down flat on the floor. What might remind us of something we see often on television these days with the Muslim community, of the way they bow down and touch their forehead to the ground, and is sort of a sign of submission to Allah. And there is something deeply religious and innately religious about this bowing and this prostrating. Again, I noticed one parish said they tried to have everyone prostrate themselves, and if not, that people would at least kneel during that time. It is sort of a submissive posture, and it has sort of a power, there's silence connected with it, to gear into the Good Friday, which really is the remembrance of Christ's passion and his death. That's what it's all about, and that gesture seems to prepare us well for the celebration.
Just in thinking of that entrance rite, and I know that we may have touched at times on the importance of rite and ritual, but I guess I find no time like Holy Week as being so important, and that's why, it really is important to be there. Something is missing if you don't go through the ritual. For example, that particular introductory ritual, the silence or the clappers that we use, the prostrating, that we don't do that too often. So, to not be a part of that is already to not take part in the, it helps create the mood. And again, certainly acknowledging that many times it's impossible, but sometimes just that idea that, well, maybe if I haven't done it, well, let's try it this year. Maybe there's something there that I can be, simply because the liturgy and the rituals of this Holy Week's liturgy are just so rich, and I think really help to convey that whole mood and theme of Holy Week. And again, what we will be taking part in on Good Friday is the veneration of the cross. Mm-hmm. And the various postures that we use at times of prayer, the standing and the kneeling down, and the no music, the silence, all that is just so key in helping to, I think, help create that. And again, the very sense of being a part, the community, that ritual thing that, again, something is lacking if I can't take part in that.
And there's you mentioned the veneration of the cross, which is an important part of that ceremony. It's our way of, cross becomes the symbol for us of Jesus Christ, who followed the will of God, and it took him to his death and executed as a criminal, and it becomes a key symbol for us, the sign of the cross and the veneration of the crucifix, kissing the feet of Jesus, and again, a submissive kind of act, it seems to me, and a recognition that our salvation comes through the death of the Lord and his resurrection. So the veneration of the cross is an important part of that ceremony. I suppose the other feature is that it's not really a Mass, that we take consecrated bread from the Holy Thursday and distribute that to people as communion, but that we don't have a Mass in which we have the Eucharistic prayer and the consecration of the bread and wine. So any of that feature that you want to pick up on at all?
Well, just simply again that that the ritual is just so different than what we're used to. That just all of the ritual helps convey that meaning. I was thinking, not in moving on, but again that life experience thing. That this particular Good Friday happens to be the 9th anniversary of the murder of Archbishop Oscar Romero. Mm-hmm. So again, giving that life experience, this year certainly we have on Good Friday the opportunity to celebrate that anniversary, which in terms of Good Friday then even puts us into another mode of thinking, and certainly gets us, maybe if we're reflecting on our life experiences, certainly we have the responsibility then in the outer world, and certainly he as a figure and just the fact that they would happen to coincide on Good Friday, I think that in itself is quite symbolic and offers us the opportunity to think broader than our own life experiences, but our commitment to the world at large.
Mm-hmm. That really does broaden it out. I suppose many people bring to the Good Friday service and the reading of the Passion and so on some of their own deaths throughout the year, and all the deaths of loved ones. I mean, it almost has to trigger that kind of response, it would seem to me, if we take it seriously. I mean, it's somber, and it's a heavy reading, and it has a great power to put us in mind of the losses we've experienced, maybe the pain of loss with the death of a loved one. So we probably bring all of that, and then what you've done, I think, is broaden it out very well to remind us that there is other suffering around the world, and not just our friends and relatives, the people who are intimate with us, but a whole world that suffers in many ways, and we really do need to be in tune with that. It's the suffering of injustice that might come to our mind on Good Friday. Geraldine, I feel a need to save some time here for the Easter Vigil, since it's the most important celebration of the whole church year, and that occurs on Saturday evening, and it includes the lighting of the fire and the carrying of the candles in procession and the singing of the Exultet, and many readings from the Scriptures, all very fundamental readings that tell us about the essential actions of God in our history, the way God has touched us and tried to save us and bring us back to Himself, and the jubilant celebration of the Eucharist. So it really is the key liturgical celebration of the whole church year, because it brings it all together. It begins in darkness, the darkness we've remembered on Good Friday, and it ends in the light of Easter. It is the Paschal mystery, the Passover, the passing from death to life, and the passing from darkness to light. It has the whole essential rhythm of human existence built into it. It says it all in one great, large, ritualized ceremony.
Well, again, culturally, I don't know that the Holy Saturday service is one that is very, very well attended, but again, it's not that our churches are crowded yet. On the other hand, those who have been through the RCIA, the Rite of Christian Initiation of Adults, many of those people will come, and many times our key symbol for the Lenten season is just the whole idea of the catechumen, and
these are the people that are joining the Christian community
right.
on this occasion.
And it all more or less culminates for them in the Holy Saturday, the Easter Vigil, as it is. And so, we see that new life through what they represent.